Yeah, welcome back to Talking Shop. We got a great text, I think an enjoyable one really to preach, challenging for the people, kind of maybe, I don't know, enjoyable if you kind of like those sacred cows you get to kind of take shots at. I enjoy that kind of thing. I get to deal with sort of, but it's Mark chapter, the end of chapter 2, so 23 through chapter 3, verse 6. Dealing with Sabbath and sort of missing the point of the gift of Christ. And so, as we'll talk towards the end of this video about the gift of divine service and coming to worship and what that means and receiving the gifts even now and how we too can get this stuff mixed up. So enjoy the conversation, participate in it, like and subscribe, and let's get after it.
In every way, yet I'm still welcome in the arms of the King.
All right, so Mark chapter 2, beginning at verse 23 through chapter 3, verse 6. All dealing with the Sabbath, essentially. So let's jump into it. On the Sabbath day, he was going through the grain fields. As they made their way, what was happening?
His disciples began to pluck heads of grain, and the Pharisees were saying to them, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?"
That's work.
Now, why are you doing work, bro?
So they're, I don't know, what do you call it? They're plucking grain. Gleaning?
Yeah. Gleaning.
Is that right?
Gleaning.
That works.
Harvesting.
Harvesting.
You can do harvesting even.
They are, so they're walking along, they're grabbing snacks. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And so the Pharisees are there. I mean, you always see, but these relationships are already bad because they're just looking for things to jump on them about. So they jump on them that they're breaking the Sabbath is the issue. Right?
They ask in such a different way from the disciples. Disciples want to know the truth. So they ask Jesus, who explains things on the side to his disciples. These guys ask questions too, but it's always with a little barb for accusation, finding fault with Christ. But they're both asking questions, just from a different
For sure.
motivation.
Yeah. One, maybe you could say one seeking the truth, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Seeking
a
to
trap.
destroy,
yeah. How does Jesus respond? What's his response to them?
Have you never read what David did when he was in need and was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and ate the bread of presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him.
All right, what's going on?
Well,
What's happening?
he's answering a question with the question. We're just talking about questions, and how does Jesus get into it? He goes right back with the Socratic method, right?
Yeah. Well, what's the story? What happened? What is he
It's a
referring
great story.
to?
You know, let our Old Testament guy chime in.
You said it's a great story. I
It's a
figured
great
you knew
story.
It, so
Well, David, they don't want to criticize David, right? So
Okay.
The Lord is very ingenious in the example that he brings forth.
Okay.
Yeah, because David, he's their hero, he's their king. And David did it.
But what is it David did? Why? What's happening? What's the story?
Well, there were laws.
I need some insight here.
Hungry.
Well, there's laws, right? It's just kind of like, think about like, even today, the Orthodox Church, when they have the Holy Communion, like only a man could be in the area of the chancel, and then there's a wall that closes off people, and only the men can handle only the priest can handle the elements. Even now, to this day, when they take communion, the priest has to mix the bread and the wine, and he flicks it into your mouth with a spoon. And so David, who was not a high priest or any of that sort, he goes into the temple and it's like, I'm hungry. So he takes the bread and he starts eating, and he gives it to his men as well to eat, and that's unlawful. And so right now the Pharisees are going after Jesus and his disciples for being unlawful. So he's saying, okay, so why is that okay and this is not okay?
Correct. And Matt, I've been waiting for your insight here.
you want the context? Is that still what you want?
Yeah.
So David is fleeing from Saul. He and his men, and they come to the at that point the tabernacle, and say to the priest, hey, can you help us out, give us some bread? And the priest says, well, the only bread I have is the showbread, the bread of the presence that's in the temple, which was set aside in Exodus for the Levites. So ultimately, though, he ends up giving David and his men the bread as sustenance.
Okay.
And so it goes down here to the way Jesus is going to argue it is, sure, there are laws. There is a hierarchy to things, but there's also a time when it's okay for those laws to be broken.
Right.
And so you have to understand what the order of things is. And that's what it's going to get to down at the end. And so in the sense of all of this, the overarching is life trumps all.
Okay.
So...
And he employs the use of the Son of Man, and you can look that up in Daniel 9.
Yeah.
And that's a very authoritative figure. So the Sabbath was made for man, not for man being made for the Sabbath. Putting it in the right order, you said. But he invokes that Son of Man lordship title, and indeed states that even the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just talk. That's the next portion.
Yeah.
Right.
I think also it's very poetic because Jesus is the Son of Man. And so it doesn't say that Jesus was gleaning. His disciples were gleaning. And that means his disciples were the ones who were breaking the law. But Jesus didn't break the law. And so Jesus still fulfills the law on behalf of us who are his sinful disciples.
Sure.
Yeah, and he even interprets the law properly in the proper perspective, unlike what they
That
had.
would be like what you were saying, love trumps, or life.
Life trumps all. Yeah.
So, and that's what we get. So, so the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to preach on.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, and how maybe as fallen creatures, we take these gifts, like a Sabbath, and we twist it into some other perverted way to control and to, limit or whatever people.
Or we cease to see it as a gift.
Yeah.
So, because the other side of it is, and I think you could certainly preach it this way, is, oh, well, I have to go to church.
Yeah.
God needs me to... No. God made this place for you. He gave you this gift because he knows that you need it. In essence, it's kind of the order even within the way that's worded. The Sabbath was made because of man, not man because of the Sabbath.
Right.
He's taking you back into Genesis, and he's going, which one was created first?
Right.
Which one actually
very
came?
good. Yeah.
And so even though it's God rested from all his work and all of that, he says, therefore he hallows the Sabbath, therefore he consecrates it. Why? For the sake of man.
Right. Very good. No, there's a lot. I know in my preaching lately, I'll do a lot of where you're kind of taking this sort of historical view of things, saying like everything's kind of led to this moment right here where this sermon is being preached, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And like I like kind of what you're saying. So you could say like all the people that have gone before us and have invested in things like building this building and paying off property and constructing things and all the stuff and even all the arguments that came through all that and all the things is like now is for you here now to have a place, right? And it's not, and again, this is actually the gift of God for you in this day and age, and all these things. And it's not, so you're not living for this thing, but look at this wonderful gift you have.
And so going with the plucking grain, it's not so much that, whether they're breaking the law or not, but it's now because of this order that you put on things, which is backwards, you're seeing a gift of God, which is grain coming out of the ground for your sustenance. You're seeing that as some sort of evil.
That's true.
And that's
because of...
Oh, go ahead.
It goes back to that old the statement you always said. You live for the Lord of the tent, not for the tent.
Yeah, right. That's good.
Right.
And that's when you're talking about creation, the food, the fruit of the land, so to speak. That's creation, and he moves into talk of the Son of Man, who is our rest. He is our Sabbath rest, which is our redemption.
Right.
So you got both that play here,
Yeah.
creation and redemption.
Yeah.
All right, so he moves on from that in the beginning, that first paragraph of chapter 3. Again, he entered the synagogue. There's a man there with a, usually it's withered hand, dried up. Something's wrong with the hand. It's
Raisin.
got atrophy of some sort, right?
Yeah.
It's not well. And now everybody's watching him. What's he going to do? Because this is a guy who clearly has power to help to do these things.
But it's the Sabbath.
And he's not doing it in a
But
corner.
it's the Sabbath.
You shouldn't
in
do
the
work
synagogue.
on the Sabbath.
In the synagogue, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess it's very interesting because now, when they were out in the fields, they were looking for him when he was out in the fields with the disciple. Now he's like, oh, you're looking for me? I'll just come to you guys. Here, let me come into the synagogue and I'll do it in front of you.
Yeah.
This is a very sort of confrontational, and
Yeah.
that's why it ends the way it does. But
Yeah.
I mean, literally, yeah, you're right. He's right in their midst. He knows, like it says, they're watching him to see whether he'll do it. He looks at that man and says, "Come here."
And again,
Right in the middle.
again, kind of seeing this gift of God. Here's a man who can heal this man. Here's a man who's in need of that healing.
Right.
And the only reason we want to see if he can do it or not is so that we can have some sort of gripe against him.
Yeah, very good.
That's
Again, not
amazing.
looking at the gift, the blessing that God has brought into their midst in doing that.
And so he gets the guy in the midst of the people, and he asks the question: is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or kill? Nobody seems to offer
Right.
a solution.
Because they know the answer, but they also know what the end of that answer is if they...
Because there's that
They
other
say it.
incident where the ox falls into a ditch, will you not pull it
Sure,
out?
yeah.
Right.
And yet this man is much more valuable than this ox.
Yeah.
So he looked around them, grieved at the hardness of their hearts. Man, you could do some sermon work there to sort of that,
Right.
what it is to hold on to the law so much that you won't seek life, and you can't see the gift.
Yeah.
And that's repeatedly, that's what grieves the Lord. He couldn't do miracles there because they didn't believe. When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith? He asks questions like that aloud. That's really what he's looking for, is faith. Do you believe this?
Yeah.
Believe in me. You believe in God.
And if you want to pull that grief into your congregation today, you could go to any sort of animosity that members might have among one another. You could go to maybe the congregation is at odds with something happening in the congregation or a neighbor or something, and that is so overwhelming that you're missing out on the gospel that has come into your midst
Right there.
to bring healing in life.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
Yeah, that's great. Ben, take note.
Well, no, it's just like what you guys were saying earlier. A lot of times we forget that we come to church to be served of God's gift.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not going to the church to serve God because we would forget that our service, our works, our acts are filthy rags in His eyes. And so you come to church to be served so you can serve others like Christ is serving
Amen.
you.
Yeah.
But that's our hiccup in our lives, is that we're just so stuck on the ways it needs to be done versus the will or why it's being done. You know?
yeah.
And that's good. That's why we brought this up before. We talked about the divine service, talking about it in those terms. The divine service, of course, implying that this is where God, the divine one, is serving us, like you said, as opposed to employing the word worship. We're going to worship. We're going to worship today.
Yeah.
It's always me-centered. It's human activity.
Maybe to bring it into Sabbath and rest, you could play on the idea that we're so focused on our works that we're missing the rest that our God is actually bringing to us.
Yeah.
Well, and as we said before, Jesus, the Son of Man, is our rest. And so why do we come to church on Sunday? To be in the Son of Man, to be in Him and of His grace and mercy so we can rest.
Yeah.
But we're just, like you said, we put all our capabilities before. We think it's our talents. We think it's our gifts. It's our skills.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so he tells them, stretch out your hand, stretches it out, boom, healed.
Yeah.
And now they're mad.
Yeah.
You thought they were mad before.
Right.
Now they're really mad. The Pharisees went out and they hold counsel with who?
The Herodians.
Yeah.
Their arch nemesis.
They don't
Enemy
like
of my
each other.
enemy
Yeah,
is my
exactly
friend.
right.
Yeah.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. These guys don't like each other. I think a good little. You should mention that at least in your sermon, like this is how locked in they are against
Right.
Christ, and how they cannot see
Yeah.
the gift that is before them. That they will team up, and they're going to team up to plot on how to destroy Jesus. So they are deeply offended. Yeah, it should be a good one to preach.
Yeah.
Some. I think you can tackle on some of these things of.
Well, and hopefully it'd be a good and easy one if you're trying to work on your people seeing worship as a gift of God, rather than on this.
That's good.
The service that we provide.
Right.
It's the service that God provides for us. Because I've said this to my Bible study groups. If we had people recognizing that, and the people that are there certainly do, our churches would be, our pews would be significantly full.
Yeah.
Because they would recognize the emptiness in the world and realize that this is a place of rest. And but that means that we need to recognize that and promote that and see it that way too.
It's for layman's terms, people forget that churches are a hospital for sinners, and it's not a club for the saints. And so that's what because of this world, we always revert back to this worldly thinking of, no, only good people go to church. I'm good, I go to church. That's why I show people that I'm good. But the reality is, we're all sick people that need to go to church to receive the rest, to receive the time of healing, the time to recuperate and become a better person, because God is making us a better person.
Yeah.
Yep.
And are we willing to pay the cost for that? Because you will be persecuted, as we left the text at the last point there, we're seeking to destroy him. They persecuted me, they will also persecute you.
All right, that cheery note. We're going to call it there. Take a minute to like and subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Always share your thoughts. That helps everybody. Kind of builds this community of preachers that are working through this week in and week out. Check out craftofpreaching.com. There'll be some insights there. Oh, and when you go to Craft of Preaching, there's if you should find the link somewhere on there for the workshops. We're going to have 2 workshops this summer, one in Las Vegas and one in Grand Rapids, Michigan. 2 incredible presenters get together with a bunch of preachers and talk about preaching and that task. So check that out. Sign up if you can make it. God bless your preaching.